Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a piece of source material that is, frankly, just pure nightmare fuel. We are unpacking an incredibly atmospheric narrative that totally deconstructs the anatomy of a late-night nightmare. I want you to really picture this: the absolute isolation of a pitch-dark road, the sudden, creepy hijacking of your only connection to the outside world, and this horrifying countdown that gives you literally one chance to survive. We're going to break down the exact mechanics of fear used in this story, analyzing how that tension is built, agonizing second by agonizing second.
So let's get right into it. I want you to put yourself in the driver's seat for a second. You're driving alone, it's late, you are completely reliant on that faint glow of your dashboard and the static coming through your radio. What would your reflexes actually do if that radio suddenly stopped playing music and started giving you personalized, terrifying survival orders? Because as we're going to see in this text, it is one thing to hear a warning. It's a completely different thing to keep the physical composure to follow it, especially when your deepest survival instincts are screaming at you to do the exact opposite.
To really grasp the immense pressure of this scenario, we have to look at the timeline. The author brilliantly maps out this ridiculously tight window for our driver. Just notice how compressed this whole thing is. We start at 1:15 a.m., which establishes this total false sense of security. Then, at 1:19 a.m., the trap is sprung with the broadcast. And by 1:20 a.m., the threat is literally there. That is a 5-minute window from complete normalcy to an absolute nightmare. A mere 60 seconds between getting the warning and the actual horrifying event happening. Time is running out before the driver can even process what is going on.
Let's rewind slightly to 1:15 a.m. and see how this all builds up. The initial setting is just masterfully designed to emphasize psychological isolation. It's a dark Saturday night on a completely deserted stretch of Highway 9, cutting right through some really heavy woods. The driver is getting annoyed by static, twisting the dial until they finally catch a clear signal. And what do they find? Smooth, flowing 1950s jazz broadcasting from some town they've never even heard of. This detail is absolutely crucial. That smooth jazz acts like a lullaby. It totally lowers the driver's guard, isolating them in this comfortable, warm little bubble of sound against those dark, imposing woods outside. But then, the bubble bursts. The music abruptly snaps off. And it isn't just static returning, it's a very calculated interruption. Suddenly, through the car speakers, the loud, rhythmic chime of an old grandfather clock rings out. 1, 2, 3 times. That sudden, jarring noise completely destroys the driver's sense of safety. The grandfather clock is such a brilliant motif here from the author, right? It represents time, specifically time that is now ominously ticking away out in the middle of nowhere.
The text tells us a slow, monotone voice comes through the speakers. Just absorb the exact words from the source text for a second. We interrupt your music with an emergency public announcement. The sheer clinical delivery of that line is what makes it so incredibly unsettling. It doesn't sound panicked at all. It sounds like an automated, inevitable system of doom, broadcasting this customized nightmare directly into the tiny enclosed space of the car.
And then, the broadcast actually lists out these horrifying survival instructions like it's a standard clinical procedure. Step 1. At approximately 1:20 a.m., a dark figure will step out from the tree line on Highway 9. Step 2. Do not hit the brakes. Step 3. Do not look in your rearview mirror. The juxtaposition here is just incredible. It's applying cold, unfeeling logic to an absolute, terrifying impossibility. It essentially forces the driver, and us as the audience, to accept the reality of the threat by giving it a specific time, a specific location, and a very specific, rigid set of rules to survive it.
Let's look at exactly how the author traps the driver in this moment. On one hand, you've got this impending threat. The driver's heart is hammering against their ribs. They look at the dashboard clock. It's 1:19 a.m. They have less than 60 seconds. On the other hand, you have the physical environment actively fighting them. The headlights are cutting through thick fog, illuminating absolutely nothing but a dense wall of trees lining both sides of a totally empty road. It is a claustrophobic trap. There is literally nowhere to swerve, nowhere to pull over safely. The environment itself is funneling the driver directly into the path of whatever is waiting at 1:20 a.m.
And then, the clock ticks to 1:20 a.m. The dreaded minute has officially arrived.
Exactly as the monotone voice predicted, the headlights illuminate a shape, a tall, unnaturally thin silhouette standing right dead center in the middle of the lane. And what makes this visual arrival so deeply chilling is the entity's complete lack of self-preservation. It doesn't move, it doesn't flinch at all. That unnatural stillness is a massive psychological weapon. It forces the driver into a split-second, impossible decision as this heavy machine speeds closer and closer to impact. Now, understanding exactly why the driver fails here is fascinating. The text says, "Panicking, I slammed my foot on the brakes." We can analyze this fatal error through the psychological concept of the freeze and panic response. Even though the radio explicitly warned, "Do not hit the brakes," human instinct takes completely over. It is an involuntary physiological reaction to sudden terror. The instinctive panic to not run over a pedestrian completely overrides the logical instruction to just keep driving. The driver's own humanity is exactly what ruins them.
Tires screeching across the wet asphalt. The car skids to a dead halt just feet away from the figure. With that single panicked reflex, the absolute most crucial rule of the emergency broadcast has just been broken. The momentum has stopped. The trap has officially closed. Now that the car is stopped, the headlights reveal the horrifying details of this figure up close. It's dressed in ragged clothes. Its face is entirely featureless, completely blank, except for two deep, dark holes exactly where its eyes should be. But it doesn't attack the car. Instead, it just slowly raises a shaking hand and points directly at the empty passenger seat right next to the driver. The dead silence of that visual is immediately broken when the car radio hums back to life. But it is no longer that slow, monotone announcer. The host's voice is now raspy, quiet, and menacingly close. The radio simply whispers, "We warned you not to stop." This right here is the story's inescapable consequence. The rule was broken, and now the consequence is quite literally inside the car with them.
The narrative pulls us into this agonizingly slow climax. The driver, terrified by that raspy voice on the radio and the shaking finger outside, slowly, very slowly turns their head to look at the passenger seat. Sitting right beside them, in the dark, enclosed cabin of the car, is the exact same tall figure. Its featureless face, with those deep, dark holes, is mere inches away from their own. The figure outside on the road was never the true threat. It was literally just the bait to make them stop the car.
So the author leaves us with this incredibly stark, unbending rule for survival. If you are ever driving alone at night and your radio suddenly interrupts with a strange emergency broadcast, keep your foot on the gas, and whatever you do, never look beside you.
It is just a brilliant, incredibly tight piece of suspense that plays perfectly on our very primal fears of isolation, the dark, and the unknown things that go bump in the night. It really leaves you questioning your own reflexes. Will you remember these rules the next time you find yourself driving alone in the dark? Tuning the dial on a static-filled radio? Keep your eyes on the road, folks. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.